Hey guys, this is Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. Today's video is about the 540 Dyno Mule and which intake made the most power and how much real power did this thing make. So for those that are new to the channel, you may not know this, but I have several engines that are built as dyno mules, and we test different things. And I say we, Gary helps me with it. I test different things like manifolds, not just manifolds, sometimes oil pans, oil level, carburetors, headers, heads, you name it, where it gets tested. Currently, there's a small block Chevy dyno mule, and now we have a big block 540 dyno mule. In the past, we had a 496 dyno mule, and coming up, hopefully, relatively quickly, there'll be an LS 408 dyno mule as well. Anyway, so during all that, we test different things. This video is only about the 540 dyno mule. This engine has a World Merlin 4 block, which is a nice beefy piece. It's got a SCAT 4340 forged crankshaft, 4250 stroke, SCAT 4340 rods, Mule pistons. They're used pistons. I'd used them in a different project. They do have lateral gas ports, and it has total seal rings, gapless ones, and those things are amazing because the engine really did seal up well. And with the domes that are on the piston and the head that's on the piston, we get about 12.3 compression ratio. The heads themselves are much like these. The heads that were used are a ProMax 317 head. They were stock except for they were milled down to 110 cc's. And the reason for that, well, you'd have to go watch the 496 dyno mule video to figure out that. It was because I was trying to see if compression was worth more power than flow. So anyway, I ended up milling that head down to get to 110 cc's because it would match a different head that also had 110 cc's. Anyway, that's the reason for that. Would I normally do that? No, because it made the alignment and getting this manifold to fit didn't happen. So, matter of fact, I make a couple other manifolds that didn't fit. So, but that's the reason why it was 110 cc's. The heads were stock, besides also having a 50-degree valve job. There was no port work done to them. And let's see, the camshaft is a comp cam solid roller. It's a big stick. 275 degradation on the intake at 50,000, 288 on exhaust, 112 lobe separation, 820 lift on intake, 808 on exhaust. It has 1.7 rockers, and that's it. The headers used, by the way, are 2 1/8. The carburation varied. So on sometimes we'll use a 1000 CFM Demon 4150 carburetor, and the other times I will use a Holley 1050 Dominator. It's their Sportsman series. It's a 2-circuit. The thing has been flawless. To be quite honest, of all the carburetors I've bought that's just been out of the box, I'm most impressed with that one. 4 jet sizes down, and it's pretty much worked on everything I've put it on. And it has made power. So very happy with that. Probably jinxing myself because the next time I use it, it's probably going to bite me in the rear. Anyway, that's pretty much the rundown on the engine, but if you have other questions about it, feel free to ask. Usually we use pump gas, and I say we because Gary and I. But in this build, we didn't because, well, the compression rate was 12.3. It was the first time we'd made some dyno pulls with it, so just to be safe, it was running on 110. But it's 91 octane with a splash of 110. In other words, it might have 1 gallon of 110 for 15 gallons of pump gas. This one didn't. It was all on 110, which just so I'm clear about this. To say I could run on pump gas, that'd be interesting to try, and maybe we will next time. I don't know. But on the first pulls, didn't really want to do that. So here are the manifolds that got tested. This one didn't, but I wanted to bring up why, and I actually really wanted to test this one. But here, let's talk about the manifolds that were tested. The first one is, this is a Brodix. It's a newer design. It's their BM 2000. This is a 4150 top, obviously. It's a rectangular port design. They also make an oval port design, but the head's a rectangular port, so says the intake. This has been modified by me. All I did was just round these dividers. It looks fancy, but not really. The other thing, I didn't port match it sorted to the heads, but I had Gary assemble this engine, and not knocking him at all, it looks like the port alignment, whenever he set the intake on or something, it's off. So it wasn't perfect, but it should have been, but it just wasn't perfectly aligned. And I don't think it's necessarily anything that he did. It could also have been the deck height, because I'm using a mock-up block to do that. So maybe it was off a little. But the point I'm trying to make is, even though it's port matched, it wasn't perfectly aligned to the heads. That's this one. Now, this manifold was actually tested 2 ways too. So first thing we did, we used the 1050 or 1000 CVM Demon. We also used this spacer. This is an AFR tapered 4-hole. This thing has been gold on almost everything. So there's only been a few times that a spacer has beaten this on a 4150, and it's pretty rare. For the most part, this is nice. And it's for the price, for the bang for the buck. I think these are like 45 bucks or something. Well worth the money. So it was tested in that configuration with the 4150, but also I used this. This spacer and the Dominator, and I mean this, and it's so rare for me to say this, on literally everything I've ever put it on has been worth power. This spacer is an adapter. It's a 4150 flange, obviously, and we go to a 4500 carburetor on the top, a Dominator that I just told you about. Every single time it's bolted on, that makes more power. And I'm not talking like 4, 3, at least 10. So with this AFR spacer, for the most part, it's better by like maybe 3. And sometimes it just makes the same. Some it might make 2 worse. This one, literally, every time of all the products I've tested, it's almost universally, when you put this thing on and with the Dominator, has been up at least 10. It's amazing. So that's why I'm like, the Dominator's like Frank's Red Hot Sauce. You put that shit on anything, it makes power. And I'll show you in a minute with dyno graphs. Don't worry, it's not just me blabbing. I am going to show you the dyno graphs. The other intake tested, this is a 2896. This is Edelbrock's Super Victor 2. This is their more modern design. It's a new one now. It looks like it's been welded because I let someone borrow it, and they needed more material at the top, so they welded up here. But I assure you there's no port work done. However, here in a second, after I'm done blabbing, I'm going to put it on that mock-up block over there to see how far off it is. I will say this one did make the most power, though. This is the intake I really wanted to use. This is a Edelbrock 2927. This is a Super Victor. This is the Super Victor 2. This is the Super Victor 1. Really wanted to get this to work. It did not work at all because when you set it on the engine, it wouldn't, because the heads had been milled and other reasons as well, it simply wouldn't work. It wouldn't bolt up correctly. There's too much gaps in it. There's no way it would even seal. So too bad. I know some of you are going to ask, and why didn't you test a Super Victor? Well, because I think it'd been great for it, probably one of the better ones. Yeah, just couldn't. It didn't fit. So what you're left with is this intake, and one other, which is not here for you in the video. I'm going to try to, after I'm done blabbing, tag it on the end. But the other intake that was tested was a Brodix HV 2002. It's been tested on the 496. You can go back and watch that video. What it has is a big old round circle here and a huge turtle on the inside. That was tested. It's still on there. I'll warn you, it was the third. So of the 3 manifolds that did get tested, this one, and that one, it placed third. This was second, and this is first. But enough of me blabbing. You probably want to see the results. So let's just get to the results. Guys, I tried finding the picture of that Brodix intake. I do have too many videos, and it's hard looking through all that to try to find it. So eventually, if you want to go back and watch the 496 stuff, that's when we tested it before. It's there in one of the videos. Probably what I'll do is like one of my Saturday update videos, I'll just have a picture so you guys can see that. I just didn't have time to look through it today, so apologies for that, but it is there. The intake's no longer available anyway, so if you called Brodix right now and try to order it, it's no longer available. You might find them on Facebook Marketplace, but they're pretty rare. It also wasn't the best one, so it's kind of like great picture of something that's not very good, at least for this combination. So anyway, there's that. I'm about to show you the dyno sheets, and you're like, I can't see that, man. I hate this. Well, here's what you could do. One of the things to make the picture bigger is instead of watching it as a thumbnail on your mobile device, so you don't have to watch ads, click on it. Yeah, you got to watch an ad, but the picture gets bigger because it takes up more of your screen space. The other thing you could do is, I can text you all these, but it costs 20 bucks. You can go to my website, wengines.com. There's a link to my online store, and if you go to the page 2, there's like 20 bucks, and I'll text you every of the dyno sheets from this. But the other thing from this is I will be printing a book like this. For those that don't know, I personally do not like looking at stuff like, it's great to glance at this on the cell phone, but it's not something I like. I almost hate having stuff on the cell phone because you have to keep enlarging it to see it. Me, I prefer to have something in print that I can just sit and I can flip through and look at stuff. Well, this is the last book that was printed. It had the last Dyno session from the 496 that was in it. And it's still available actually on my website too. But what I'm telling you this for is because I'm going to create a book for the 540 as well, that's just like this. And we'll have like this, has the flow sheets from, that's actually the heads we're using on the 540. But it will have flow sheets, dyno charts, and all that. And just something you can keep as reference so you don't have to keep going back through the video, watch another ad. You just get the book. But anyway, I'm going to have those for pre-sale on my website as well, my online store anyway, so I can know how many to print. So I don't have any in stock right now because I want to know how many I print, so I'm not printing so many that have extras. But anyway, that will be available too. But let's get to the numbers, so just to help you out there. So the first numbers we're going to show you is from this intake, the Brodix BM2000. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to try to zoom in as much as possible. You can see it. This is with the 1000 CFM 4150 Demon carburetor, and it had 35 degrees of timing. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, we did not try to maxing out timing, and that it was kind of a mistake on our part. But the thing is, early on, we do timing. We try to see what makes the most power, but that's when we was having oil problems, and you can watch that in the previous video. So we never really addressed that. Once the oil got all taken care of, we were on the crappiest of the intakes that we tested, so it was like, yeah, maybe we add more power because we only tested 35. So let's say we went to 38 and gained 10. Well, we didn't have the better one on, so it's like, why bother? The next time we go to the dyno again with this, I'm going to try maxing it out to get it more, to optimize its tunes, what I'm trying to say. There's nothing wrong with 35 degrees. I don't think it's way off from where it would be. Like, it might be down 10, but it's definitely safe. So here we go. Here's your numbers. Remember, this is 1000 CFM 4150. If we look, it made 829 horsepower at 6,500 RPM. It made 694 horsepower or torque at 5,800 RPM. So not bad, really, when you think about this. And when I was watching this, I was like, that's actually pretty good. Because if you remember when I was talking about my 540 that was dyno tested for the Engine Master Challenge, it made way more torque at the lower RPMs, but it did not make this kind of power. It only made like 810. Same carburetor, by the way, too. And you might be asking yourself, why didn't you pull it down lower RPM? One, this is more of a bracket style engine, so I think it's pointless to pull down at the lower RPMs because most bracket cars do not start at 3,000 RPM. All right, they don't have a 3,000 stall converter. The other thing is, well, this is never going to be a tow vehicle who tows with 110 octane, you know? So there's no point. This is more of the range it would run in anyway. So good numbers for a baseline, 830 and 694. But same intake, remember that same BM2000, but now I put that adapter on with a Dominator. Watch this. Boom. Now 854.5 horsepower at 7,000. So it raised its peak from 6,500 to 7,000 RPM with the Dominator carburetor. And also went from an 830 to an 854. That's a 25 horsepower gain from the Dominator. So yes, I put that shit on everything. Usually when we put the Dominators on the engines that make less power, they don't gain as much. So for instance, on this small block Chevy, it gains about 25 horsepower, probably because this engine is making more steam. This thing's outstanding. Look at the torque too. 707 foot-pounds of torque up from the 694. There's no way you can argue around this. That was a win. That is a gain. So, and by the way, it's only a 50 CFM bigger carburetor. Much more power. Fantastic. So, highly recommend. It really woke up the engine. And pretty stout now, right? So, the next intake we went to was this one. And I want to show you some of this. That's the reason why I have the mock-up block here. This is that 2896, but I want to show you this. Look down that runner. Sorry about the strobing effect. There we go. See that gap that you got right there where the cylinder head kind of meets where the intake's actually overhanging the head? Well, that's stuck. It's like the whole thing got kind of core shifted on this runner, and it's opposing one over here because you could see it again. The others will be perfectly aligned almost, but not those two. And I mention that because there's no way you could fix that. At least like shifting it to make it line up better. Just isn't going to happen. It just is the way it is. So I'm trying to say is 2 of the banks aren't perfect. The other 6 were pretty close. Now, top and bottom, not at all, because this has not been port matched at all. However, this was ran with a 2-inch 4-hole tapered spacer from Procomp. So yeah, I know it's a cheapie, but it's what I had, and well, it made some more power. So here we go back to this. Here is those numbers. Same Dominator carburetor. No jet change, none of that. Let me get my, there we go. 875 horsepower now at 7,000 RPM. That's a gain of 20. That's big. Torque though, now this is where it gets interesting. Its torque is 708 foot-pounds of torque at 5,900, and it was making 707 before. So it only gained 1 foot-pound of torque, but it gained 20 horsepower. Now here's something I can say for sure in general about the intakes that I've tested so far, because several of you know I've tested several small block Chevy intakes and big block Chevy intakes. This is I can almost tell you this is a general rule. The more power your engine makes, the bigger the difference the intake manifolds make. So for instance, when we were on the small block Chevy and it was only making 550 because they had the AFR enforcer heads, you might switch an intake from a really good one to a really bad one, and there's only maybe 5 to 10 horsepower difference. This, we instantly saw 20 because this baby is making almost 900. So we're at 875. And like I said, I really wish we'd leaned on it at this point, because I think if we'd gone after the timing, it probably would have pumped it up. You might say, well, your air-fuel ratios look completely wrong. That's because the air hat isn't on. This is measured. The O2 reading sensor isn't on the sheet. So you can kind of tell from looking at your brake specifics, it's not that bad. They're in the 440s. So yeah. Anyway, probably if we gotten after it, maybe an 885, which is still outstanding. There's definitely more room to improve on these, and I can't wait for later times. But this so far is right now where we're at. You might say, why didn't you go to a higher RPM? That's the other thing. We probably should have on this one. We never did go beyond 7,000 RPM on this intake manifold, and really we should have. But also we're stud mount rockers, don't forget that too. And they are the Comp Pro Magnum rockers, so they're the steel 1017 ratio. We probably should have gone to like 72 and see what it did. But this is the next intake. So this is the final one that's on there still to this day. This is that Brodix HV 2002, the Turtle one. And it was a 4150 intake manifold, but we ran the adapter and ran the Dominator. So it was running the same Dominator as what we had on this. Now, I don't have an overlay, but I will when the book gets printed. Let's look at the peak numbers to begin with. So we went from an 875. This one thing brought it down to get it to focus. There we go. To an 843 at 7,000. So quite a huge difference. This is what I mean. The intake differences are larger when you're making more power, and that's a huge difference. Huge, huge difference. So it lost quite a bit using this. That's why I was like, why just timing? We might get to 850, which still wasn't even as good as this Brodix intake right here, the BM 2000. So it didn't really make sense for me anyway. Now what's interesting about this, if you look at the torque though, the torque also was down at peaks. So if you look at peaks, it only did 704 to the 708. But look where it starts. So this is 5,200, it made 695. 5,200, we are 678. So with the lower RPMs, had we pulled it lower, which again, no need, this was much better. That the Turtle intake is better at the lower RPMs. But again, we're not going there. No need. So that kind of wraps up all the intake manifold testing that was done. And hopefully it gives you an idea of all the stuff and how that all played out. So if you want to see a better view, pre-order the books, or just get the text version if you do have them on your phone. And what's coming up with them? Well, and I should point out one other thing, and I didn't mention this. We did try other intake manifolds. Like I said, I tried that one that physically wouldn't fit. He also had, and I really, really wanted to test it, was he had a Profiler Sniper Junior, which compared to that one, it really probably would have been the better one. I think we would have hit some major numbers. Absolutely would not fit. It's because the heads that are on there, like I said, they've been milled to 110 cc's, and this valve cover rail right here on the Pro Max, it sticks out so much anyway, which I really wish they'd have like a notch, a V-cut here that goes up further. Because of the milling, it absolutely will not fit. I would have had to butcher the intake, and it wasn't my intake, it was the customers of Dunsworth, so I didn't want to. He said, yeah, you can run it, but he didn't want me to modify it to make it to fit, and I don't blame him. So I didn't get a chance to run that, which is too bad, because that one, I think, will be the winner. I plan to do other intake manifold tests with it, obviously. I would love, 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 love to do a tunnel ram test with that as well. Because for those that don't know, the small block Chevy was dynoed last week, and we tested 3 different tunnel rams on it. So to do the tunnel rams on the big block Chevy, cat's meow. That would be really, really neat, and love to test that. But the next time it goes on the dyno, probably what's going to happen is we're going to use this turtle intake again because it's already on there. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to switch oil pumps to the gear rotor oil pump from Titan, dyno it. And then we're going to switch to the Merce oil pan, dyno it again. And then I'm probably, time permitting, put that baby back on it and start adjusting timing and see where we're at and see what we can get. I think with the better oil pan and oil pump, maybe we'll get to maybe 890 and maybe crack 900, which is outstanding for the amount of pieces that are here. It'd be really, really cool. There's also other plans for the future for this. Hopefully switch to some different heads that flow quite a bit more. Because remember, these heads, and this will be in the book too, but this is also from the 496, and hopefully I can get to it right away. But I think these heads only flow like 386. They weren't outstanding. Nothing to brag home about. They're really small, yep. So the heads themselves, yep. Nope, that's the wrong head, so that makes sense why it wouldn't look weird. There it is. Yeah, this is it. It only flowed 386, and the short runner only flowed 364 at 1. So yeah, and the low lifts were pretty bad. It just wasn't that good. Small head, 317 cc's. For a 540, it was wanting to make more power, it just isn't there. So anyway, that'll be changed too. Hopefully you guys got something out of this video. Thanks for watching. Remember, I'm no Superman. I do not port cast iron heads, and I appreciate every single one of you.